Hey everybody, this is a clip from the latest episode of the Randi Rhodes Show. If you want the full episode, you can watch live on Free Speech TV, Dish Channel 9415, DirecTV 348, Sling, Roku, and Apple TV.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
We want to invest in building our democracy and saving it from any enemies, foreign and domestic. So we've sent our legislation to the Senate. They sent our legislation to the Senate. Moscow Mitch says that he is the Grim Reaper. Imagine describing yourself as the Grim Reaper, that he's going to bury all this legislation. Well, we have news for him. All of this legislation is live and well in the general public. And since I'm in Springfield, I'll just quote a Republican president, Abraham Lincoln. He said, "Public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing." And that public sentiment is what you will help us make sure he is aware of.
Yeah, it's, Moscow Mitch over there, who got some aluminum plant installed in Kentucky to prop up his, approval ratings, is on the ballot in 2020, obviously, and does not want to pass any gun legislation. Maybe in September, we'll get some red flag laws. Maybe then we'll get some red flag laws. We will never get an assault weapons ban out of this Senate. We will never get background checks that are meaningful out of this Senate. We will never get any meaningful gun legislation out of this Senate. We have got to defeat these people in 2020, and there are enough of them on the ballot that have really, really bad records on everything you care about. From taxes to wages to, $15 minimum wage to the gun legislation to background check. I mean, like 99.9% of America wants comprehensive background checks, and we can't get it out of the Senate because of guys like, Moscow Mitch over there. So trust me, if we show up, we will win because there are more of us than there are them, and we could get some meaningful gun legislation. This has got to stop. This is like a bloodletting. And you know what part of it is? I'm not kidding. The show today is called Get the Lead Out. Why? Because lead is flying through the air and lead is in the water. And it ain't just Flint anymore. Oh, no. You got lead in Chicago. You got lead in Milwaukee. You got lead in Newark. You got lead in Flint. You got lead all over the place at California. Very health conscious California. Tons of lead in the drinking water. In the homework section of the RandiRhodes.com website, in the homework section, you can click on an article that will show you all the results of the lead testing in California neighborhoods that have an astronomical amount of lead in the drinking water. Now, Newark, New Jersey's in the news today because you have, a group of environmentalists who sued Newark finally because the lead content in the water is dangerously, there is no acceptable level of lead in any drinking water. But Newark, the whole time, I think Cory Booker is cooked over this story. I'll just say it because I think that will probably end up being true. But because he was mayor of Newark, but they've known for a really long time, at least in 2015, they've known that there's a ton of lead in the water, and they've been telling the people that it's safe to drink. Go ahead, don't worry about it. Then all of a sudden, they started passing out these pure water filters, but a lot of them didn't fit the faucets, and a lot of them didn't work, and a lot of them didn't filter out all the lead. And so a group sued Newark. And after the lawsuit hit them, then they realized, we've got financial, losses coming if we don't. So they had to tell the people of Newark, like yesterday, that the water is not safe to drink. And they started passing out bottled water in New Jersey But the crazy part is that the bottled water had an expiration date on it. And so now they were worried about passing out water beyond its expiration date. Not that water has an expiration date, but the plastic does, right? So you could either have, now you got a choice in there, either lead from the tap or whatever leaches through the plastic in the expired water, the toxic chemicals there. So you see, now you have choices. No, but this is so, I mean, in the olden days, you had the rich drinking wine while the people died of cholera in the water. At least lead takes a little longer to kill you than cholera does. But remember, the rich can still afford bottled water. They can bathe in it. They can, shower with it. They can do whatever they want. But this is so unbelievable. There are a number of reports, a number of studies that clearly show that there is a link between lead content in the water and violent crime. Yeah. Lead content in the water and violent crime are completely scientifically linked. Why? Because lead in the water intellectually inhibits, the brain. It also inhibits emotional intelligence. It also creates learning disabilities in children who are exposed to lead at a young age. And, these combinations of things create children who grow up to be frustrated adults who can't function in society. They can't figure their way out of a paper bag, and they turn to crime. So economists have been studying this. They've looked at the aggregate effects of lead exposure on city-level crime using data from the early 20th century. And the authors, James Feigenbaum and Christopher Muller, noted that one of the primary ways individuals were exposed to lead was drinking water pumped through lead pipes. Now, when people change the water source, sometimes the water is more corrosive than the previous water source, or if they change the way that they treat the water, sometimes it's more corrosive. The water is more corrosive, and it actually creates, a corrosive environment where the lead from the pipes, and it's usually the last mile of pipe. It's usually the service pipe from the main water, whether it's city water, well, whatever, to your home. And people are responsible for that, and they can't afford to replace it. And Trump refuses to do an infrastructure project. So you have, all of this lead and all of this crime in the areas where the poorest people live, where the blackest people live, who can't afford to retrofit their houses. I said, there's a ton of articles in the homework section about this problem today, because it's not just poverty and bad schools and poor nutrition and poor health care and other environmental toxins. No, it's primarily from lead in drinking water that causes all of this crime. City-level violent crime is more compelling than previous correlational studies because of the lead content in the water. Oh my God! The Roman Empire. It fell apart, and they used to cook all their food in lead pots and pans. Just saying. They did. So I got to tell you, the president doesn't want to address any of the root cause problems. Won't talk about these, 10,000 bullets that, kids in Ohio are hoarding. Won't talk about guns, and won't talk about the lead.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
Radio Beacon to Radio Beacon.